Welcome in to episode 018 of the Modern Dealer Podcast. My name is David Farmer with Intice, and with me, as always, is David Bertoncini. How are you doing, David?
I am super duper well, man. Just above average today, and ready to kick into episode 018. First of all, just want to make sure that everybody knows that it's a cow coffee day because the temperature outside is pushing 100 degrees, still late October in Florida. In addition to that, just to mention that since it is October, it is the last week, 2 days before Halloween, October.
Oh, yep.
We got some spooky socks on today. I got my Halloween bat socks, and of course, always just didn't want to forget, since we're talking about October and everything, want to make sure that our audience is tuned into iTunes. Make sure you please subscribe on iTunes, and be sure to subscribe on YouTube, and you want to turn on notifications.
Ding.
And make sure you check us out and interact with us on our Facebook page and on the moderndealerpodcast.com. But we're ready to jump into episode 018. Who do you appreciate?
018. Yeah, hard to believe it's already 018. Hard to believe that it is the end of October. It's hard to believe that it is the end of almost the end of a decade, moving into 2020 and beyond. And as you said, I think yesterday's temperature was 100 degrees.
Feels like 100 degrees.
Feels like it was 100. But I think we're going to get a little bit of break this weekend, rolling into Halloween. So hopefully we're going to have a cooler November, December. I think that would be nice. It's been damn hot this summer.
Crazy.
All right. So anyway, today on today's episode 018 of the Modern Dealer Podcast, we're going to kind of pick up where we left off in last week's episode. So 017, 5 tenets of digital retailing, where we looked at from a dealer's perspective of what they should be doing when designing their internal processes. This week's episode, I wanted to kind of take it from a different perspective, and that would be from the customer's perspective. And I really wanted to spend a little bit more time on last week's episode, but that kind of goes into the structure of the Modern Dealer Podcast. I want to make sure that we're delivering value to the people that are taking their time and listening. So we try to keep this compressed to 35, 45 minutes. Not just flipping on a recorder and talking for 3 or 4 hours, which I've seen some podcasts do. If you prefer a shorter podcast, please let us know in the comments below. If you want us to go for 3 or 4 hours, we'd have no problem doing that. Although I think your time would be better spent as long as we are delivering value. So. Today, David, one of the reasons I wanted to talk about car buying today from the customer's experience, because guess what? I'm in it.
I'm in it.
I am in it right now. I guess I just got off the phone with my daughter not too long ago. We're working through getting a new vehicle for her. Unfortunately, she had an accident and totaled her previous vehicle, so we have to get a replacement. So we're looking at leasing a new one.
You were forced to market.
Forced into market, yeah.
Yep. Which, a couple weeks ago, this was not a conversation.
No.
But now you are on the customer side of the fence and the customer side of the transaction to coincide with the, episode 017, the five tenets of digital purchasing. So now you're on that side of the fence. And so, David, tell me, how's it going?
Really fucking bad. Now, I'll tell you why that. Now, the reason that's really funny is this is actually the second take for episode 018. I think this has only happened one other time,
right,
where we had some technical difficulties rolling into the podcast, and we didn't have our audio working correctly. So we kind of knew what was going to happen here, talking about how bad it is.
But we knew it was bad just even going into it in the beginning. It was just that, I could see the frustration of you, a veteran to the business. Imagine somebody, a customer's point of view that's not, does this once every, 42 months, every 5 years, they're buying a car. And here you're seasoned as a, as a buyer, or actually seasoned in the business.
Yes.
And of course, through technology and everything. And with the friction that you're getting from the dealer. Now, the dealer did not know your background or who you were or where you're from, but here you are just trying to assist your daughter in leasing a Corolla from a Toyota dealership 900 miles north of us.
Exactly. So really the way that I wanted to go about this process is to really feel what it's like from a customer's perspective. So we're forced in the market. I'm glad you brought that up because I think many people that are making a decision to purchase a vehicle are forced into the market. And it's not something that maybe they've thought about for a long period of time, but hey, they need to make a decision and they're into the market. And they're looking at purchasing a vehicle. I'm trying to do this as much online as possible. However, I can't do it 100% online because we're separated by about 1,000 miles. And I want to make sure that this is a vehicle that is of her choosing, that she's getting the color that she wants, that she takes the opportunity to test drive the vehicle to make sure that she's going to be happy with it. Now, that's one thing you cannot do online. You cannot take that test drive online. You can watch the videos, but you can't touch it, smell it, feel it, and get all of your senses involved with the purchase of the vehicle.
It's missing the kinesthetics of it.
Yes, exactly, right? So, so we're taking more of a hybrid approach, which I think most people want to do. They want to use technology to engage in the buying process. They want to use technology to communicate, to make it easy, and to kind of do it on the customer's time and on the customer's preferred way of communicating. And I think that is really the perspective of digital retailing that dealers should be really trying to look at is what is the car buying experience from your customer's point of view on how they're interacting with your dealership. Now, we know that over the years, from selling cars in the mid-90s through to almost 2020 now, is that we've learned some things as auto retailers, best practices, what dealership employees should be doing. And these are the things, the reason I said that I've had kind of a bad experience is I've reached out to multiple dealerships to try to engage into the process. And many dealerships have still yet to reply to me with anything other than just a stock email response.
The old templated response.
That's it.
What the response time, was it under 2 minutes?
No,
so
none of them.
Not even under 5 minutes?
I would say that the quickest response was probably measured in hours.
Wow.
Didn't even get autoresponder.
Shit.
Yeah, it's
That's
bad.
pretty bad.
Yeah.
So, I mean, with technology nowadays, I mean, you should at least get a bot to respond to it that like, hey, David, thanks for your interest in the 2020 Corolla. We'll be right back with you. Here's some links to some articles or some videos or something. Give you some sort of substance. And then, of course, that lead goes to the internet department and they should be all over you like a pack of dogs on a three-legged cat. Because I asked you in the first round of episode 18 was, I said, hey, were they able to give you at least some sort of, other than a templated response and just, make you feel good about something? But I guess not, huh?
Yeah. So, and one of the stories I can share with this is, and I think this is probably the case at many dealerships, is that in your automated responses that you're going to have maybe 3 or 4 days after the initial lead comes in, you're going to have a email that comes from the general manager of the dealership. And it's a process touch point. I think it's a really good idea, but I think it is something that you really should execute on from a truthful standpoint. So what I mean by that is I got an email from the general manager of the dealership saying, hey, I just want to make sure that you've got the information that you're looking for, that you've been taken care of from the sales department, and if there's anything else you need, please let me know, blah, 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 right? So I noticed in that reply to me that the reply to email address was actually to the salesperson. So even if I would have just replied as though I'm talking to the general manager of the dealership from a customer standpoint, it's going to the salesperson. So we're not even being able to start that conversation. What I would recommend is if you have that type of template, put the general manager's email address. If you can't do it as the reply to, make sure you at least include that email address and or a telephone number. So in case of a situation like where I got an email back a couple times without any information. So, for example, I'll just tell a little bit more of the story, and I don't want to take too much time on it. But so my request was pretty straightforward, and that it was, hey, I'm looking at a vehicle. My daughter got in an accident. We're going to have to get a replacement. What I'd like to be able to do is get a Corolla, 36 months, 12,000 miles per year, Tier 1 credit with the college grad buyer's rebate applied. Can you do that for me? Never once got a payment.
Pretty simple request. I mean, you're a Tier 1 buyer. You know what you want. It's not like, I don't know what I want. I need payments of $200 a month. I ain't got no money down. I got bad credit. I mean, yeah, of course, your salesperson that's cherry pick is going to be like, shit, I ain't taking that lead. But here you are rolling in. You know, you've got all the information, you know what you want, and was it the car wasn't like an out-of-stock vehicle, right? You weren't asking for something that they had to, call up try to locate into that store. It was a pretty low-hanging fruit request, right?
Absolutely, and I think that type of request is going to be very similar. People are doing the research. They know what they want. They know if they want to buy, if they want to lease, if they want to finance. They know what the vehicle is, but there's certain pieces of information that's harder to get from a dealership, and a customer should be able to have interaction. But so you can see how customers are getting turned off by the process that's typically at a dealership. And for the modern dealer, for customers or for people that are watching this episode, you can really start to separate yourself from your competition by making sure that you have an autoresponder in place that's going to provide value, that you're going to be able to respond in a quick manner, that you're going to be able to answer questions that are being asked to you. I mean, this is not revolutionary, magic type of stuff. These are things that we should just be executing on in the automotive industry. And if we don't, what's going to happen?
We're going to be like Sears. We're going to be like Circuit City, Toys R Us. I mean, they're coming. I mean, Amazon's coming. You got Carvana. We've got all these car retailers, which are, they're just chipping away at market share. But every year we're going to look at charts that we're basically going to tell you that, dude, we're losing ground. I mean, if you don't change, don't worry. Everybody else is changing around you.
Yeah, so there's lots of people looking at the car business and saying, hey, there's a huge opportunity to build a good business out of what dealers are not willing to do. And we have some great examples. So in this episode 018, we are going to be talking about the car buying experience. And I think that the lack of providing a open, clear car buying experience is opening the door for others to come in and say, hey, Mr. Dealer, if you're not willing to do it, we will. And we're going to do it in a big way. We're gonna pool our resources. We're gonna raise a bunch of money, and we're gonna move into the car buying business, right? A car selling business. So there's some online retailers that we're going to look at today. We've talked about a few of these in the past, but they are raising ungodly amounts of money. Starting with Beepi. Here's a good example of somebody that said, "Hey, the way the dealers are doing it is not the way the customers want it. There's huge opportunity here. I'm going to raise money, and I'm going to try to disrupt that business model. $146 million was raised by Beepi. Some of you might be aware of this company. Some of you might not. They are no longer around. Unfortunately, they did go BK. Isn't that correct?
Beepi, BK. It may have been in their marketing strategy. I mean, Beepi, it didn't sound like a real good home run name when they were strategizing with that idea to bring online car buying to the market there with Beepi. But they right behind them there, or actually ahead of them, Carvana, which we've talked about in several episodes. Yep. They're doing a great job, because the number one thing about this episode is the car buying experience from the customer's point of view.
Yes.
As a modern dealer, of course, at the end of my retail career there, my Toyota money, my bonus money, 20% of my pay was based upon CSI.
Yep.
So here you are trying to buy a car, and you're already coming into the arena with expectations as your background, 30 years in the business plus, but your CSI, I mean, you're kind of on your way of being a pissed off customer.
Yep.
I mean, it's like you're going to be a shitty survey unless somebody turns this around for you pretty fast, right?
Now I do, yes, yeah, exactly. And what I do want to say, and I should have said it earlier, that the poor experience that I've had by dealerships was not by the dealership that we're doing business with right now. So we are working through the process of getting my daughter into a new vehicle, and the dealership that I'm working with right now, they are doing a really good job from a communication standpoint. So I don't want anybody that might be assisting my daughter to listen to this episode or watch this episode and go, wait a minute, I thought we were doing this good. I thought, this is a good experience. We have had a really good experience. We have really good communication by the salesperson. I personally talked to a sales manager and business manager yesterday, again today. So we're working through the logistics of purchase of the vehicle. And you know what? This is something that we didn't really talk about previously, prepping for this episode, but a lot of making the decision of who you want to do business with really comes down to that personal connection and the experience, right? And I think that online retailers kind of forget that, is that yes, people want a better car buying experience. Yes, they want it faster, but really that car buying experience, it's a big deal. There's many pieces involved in it. Being able to talk to a process expert, a product expert, to kind of work through the different steps, it does take that personal connection. It does take somebody being polite and nice and knowledgeable. It takes that salesperson. We just talked about Carvana just a moment ago. Their big advertising campaign is, we sell cars, but we're not salespeople. You can buy 100% online with 0% salespeople. So they're really downplaying that salesperson experience. And the reason is because of the bad experience that's out there. But as many bad experiences out there, there are also good experiences.
It's a culture change. I mean, it's a whole perception in the customer's mind, because to this day, I mean, you can ask somebody, I'm like, we still, as an industry, automotive industry, we're still down at the bottom of the barrel as far as like we're equivalent to an attorney on like how bad the public wants to deal with us. They're like, you want to go buy a car? And they're like, no, I'm good. Yeah. I'm good. I'd rather buy from home. And all these companies we're talking about are they capitalize on this hole in our business model, and like that, on our culture, that we suck, and they rather just like, hey, let me just not involve a salesperson. Let me do most of, if I can do the entire transaction online, that's what makes them happy. And kind of the catalyst to this whole episode was on Saturday. I text you. I'm like, hey, there's the Vroom, and we'll get it up in here. There's a Vroom truck at my, where I live in my community, dropping off a vehicle to one of my neighbors, and I'm like, wow. And I have not seen a Vroom. I've seen several Carvanas driving around, but now here's Vroom entering the space. They're like, you've got the McDonald's of the industry, being Carvana. Now you've got Vroom coming in the digital space. They're dropping off a vehicle, and they're dropping off a 2018 Jaguar. And I was like, man, I was pretty impressed. And I was talking to the driver, and I was like, hey, how's it going? He's like, oh man, customers absolutely love us because it's the whole experience. They save time. Now, he hasn't really spent much time in the business himself, but from what he knows, when he's dropping off these cars, people are happy to see him. I mean, it was just like
it still is an exciting time to buy a car.
Yeah, and it's just like, we're happy to see the Amazon guy when he shows up, the UPS guy, and as long as you're bringing us a package of something that we want, we're happy to see you. And they're dropping off a car, and these people are like, man, I'm excited about the process. The process you're going through, for lack of a better term, fucking sucks, man, right?
Yeah. It really is unbelievable. Speaking about Beepi, Carvana, there's another company, Shift. They've raised $300 million. Carvana raised $225 million. Vroom, $440 million. As we decided for episode 018 to talk about the car buying experience and the way that online retailers are disrupting that model. I was quite shocked to find out that we got, companies that's raised $150 million, $225 million, $300 million, and Vroom the most, from what I've been able to see, at $440 million. So I mean, it is amazing how much money is being invested into the online car shopping experience, and I think that the whole idea of the reasoning there is that we know that there's a gap between customer satisfaction and what dealers are doing right now, and that's what they're trying to fill, is to provide a better car buying experience. When I did some research on Vroom, there's not really a whole lot of information out there. When we did the research for Carvana, I was able to go to YouTube and just type in, I bought my car from Carvana. And I saw a bunch of videos, online videos, online reviews for Carvana. I did the same thing for Vroom, and I found one or two.
Right.
And I dug.
Right.
I was looking and looking and looking. So Vroom is nowhere in the customer mindset like Carvana is. We're starting to see a lot more TV commercials in this market for Vroom, and you're starting to see some deliveries right now, but still nowhere near where Carvana is from a mind share standpoint.
Well, I mean, and they just recently got some funding from AutoNation. So, I mean, we looked at some of these companies and where their money's coming from. They just recently received $146 million in funding from AutoNation. And as I mentioned back in 2016, 2015, AutoNation was trying to deploy this themselves within their own dealership franchise by shortening the process with AutoNation Express. Failed miserably at it. So they're like, you know what? We'll just reach out. We'll just invest in a company that's doing it, that has the structure to deliver, and not being a silent investor because they're a publicly traded company, but they dropped $146 million into a private company. I mean, because this company's they're not publicly traded. So they're private equity monies, but they are coming up. They're coming up right behind AutoNation with their process. Carvana with their processes, and they're not doing a bad job. I mean, it's in process.
Absolutely. And what we're going to do is we're 22 minutes into our first segment, so we're going to go ahead and take a break, and we're going to come back and learn a little bit about the history, or at least what's available about Vroom. And welcome back into the second and final segment of episode 018 of the Modern Dealer Podcast. So this week's episode is a little bit different than our previous episodes, David, where I feel like it's a little bit mushier, that we're kind of talking about a couple different things instead of just one specific subject. But I like that we're kind of going in this direction. So we're going to talk a little bit more about Vroom and the history of Vroom, but really getting back to the customer experience and what they're trying to solve for, what they're trying to fix. And that's really what we're looking at is, these big companies raising hundreds of millions of dollars coming in to fix a customer car buying experience problem. Because I think that's really what it comes down to, is that they feel that they can do a better job providing a better experience for the customer. But one of the things I did, as we've kind of chatted about this over the last this morning, is that the customer buying experience is kind of like the cherry on top of all of the infrastructure necessary to be able to sell vehicles, right?
Very good description. And I mean, that you just hit it right on the nail, right on the head, man, because that's exactly what it is. It's the final, it's the cherry on top.
Yep. And the infrastructure that's needed is not like we're in the shoe business. Now, I'm sure there's a lot of logistics in selling shoes like Zappos. I think they've built a great business selling shoes, and they really provide a great customer experience in selling shoes. But I mean, a pair of shoes, maybe they weigh a pound or two versus 3,000 or 4,000 pounds in a vehicle. You know, you can ship shoes through FedEx. You could have a FedEx truck with 1,000 pair of shoes in there, but moving 4 or 5 vehicles is a huge undertaking. Mm-hmm. Moving 3,000 or 4,000 cars is a monumental undertaking, and we're dealing not with new shoes. We're not dealing with new vehicles. We're dealing with used vehicles, titling issues, reconditioning issues, acquisition strategies, reconditioning strategy. I mean, there's just so many pieces that go into it. It's not just about that last piece of the customer shopping experience. I mean, that's only one small part of the whole business model.
You've got, state title paperwork, you've got taxes, you've got compliance, you've got financing, you've got so many other things that are involved, which, for years, all these companies have sat on the sidelines. Even when I was a digital dealer in Orlando, I was blown away that Walmart got into the arena, and I'm like, yeah, seriously? Mm-hmm. Walmart's in the arena, but they're not in the arena like these companies here. These companies are owning the inventory. These companies are raising.
They're car dealers.
They are car dealerships that are digital. And between the 4 of them that we just covered, I mean, they raised $1.1 billion in revenue in startup money to say, hey, we want to enter this arena, and we're going to do it better. And they are.
So. A little bit of information about Vroom specifically. Company was founded in August of 2013 by Marshall Chesrown. Probably saying that name incorrectly, so I apologize. Kevin Westfall and Scott Chesrown. To date, Vroom has raised over $440 million in venture capital and private equity. It also has a refurbishment facility in Stafford, Texas, and was included on Forbes' list of the hottest e-commerce startups of 2015. Vroom's CEO is Paul Hennessy, who was previously the CEO of Priceline. In December 2015, the company acquired Texas Direct, a Houston-based company founded in 2002 that is now owned by Vroom but operates as a separate brand. The combined company is profitable and has reached $900 million in revenue in 2015. However, in February 2018, Vroom closed operations in its Whitestown, Indiana facility and laid off approximately 25% of its staff in New York City and Stafford, Texas location. Lastly, as we were saying right before we took a break, in December of 2018, Vroom closed Series G financing round of $146 million, led by AutoNation, and began scaling its operations again. So they've had kind of a rocky road, it seems, and it is a public company, so not everything is private. There's not a whole lot of information out there about Vroom. Typically, when I go in and do some research, I'm able to find some videos. I'm able to find speaking engagements by different C-level employees. Not a whole lot of information out there about Vroom. There's a few articles that I'm referencing in our slideshow today. But I think really what is the biggest thing that we can learn from Vroom is that they are able to raise a bunch of money and to fix the customer buying experience problem that we have in automotive.
The big problem being the perception from the customer,
yes,
and like your experience that you're having right now, and as I said earlier, I mean, you're a seasoned, automotive retailer yourself. Now you put yourself in the customer's shoes, which just doesn't do this enough, and they're just got to be being frustrated with that process. That you would think the response times, we are less than 90 days from 2020. Your response times would be under 5 minutes, just to say, hey, I received your information. I know when I've hit on some dealerships that use, the Entice software, I got a phone call within 2 minutes. I'm like, whoa. I'm like, hey, who's calling me? And it was one of the stores. I had just accidentally made myself a lead just testing their software. But aside from that, this has got to be a better experience for the customers, and that's really the bottom line of this: is how do we deliver a better experience for the customer using digital retailing? That's the whole purpose of it. I mean, just to streamline this and make this a overall better customer satisfaction experience for everyone.
Yeah, I mean, we're going to come back to that in just a second. I just wanted to say that in our slideshow, I am including some links to some additional articles about Vroom, about when they acquired Texas Direct, who used to be and probably still is the largest reseller on eBay. They've been a very successful independent used car dealership since 2002. They sell a bunch of cars. They're wholly owned by Vroom at this point. Some additional information about laying off 25 to 50% going back a couple years ago, and then the large raise that they recently had with AutoNation. I also found a couple videos of some C-level employees talking about Vroom, what they're trying to do, how they see themselves fitting in the market, and kind of why they founded the company. And some of the takeaways that I took from that ties back to exactly what you were just saying a moment ago. That's why I said I wanted to come back to it, is fixing the overall customer experience. So in their perception, their product is the transaction. So what they're bringing to the marketplace is a digital retailing transaction. So it's the technology and it's the experience. That's the product. That's kind of the why they're doing what they're doing. What they found was fintech in automotive is bad. So what I mean with that, financial technology in the automotive space, it's very fragmented. If you, as a consumer, go to a dealership's website and you go through the process in a typical dealership, and you submit, you go to get a loan to find out what you could afford, what your payments would be. It's kind of a bad process. And if you remember, David, there's a few things that he said about that process where they really worked hard to make that easy, correct?
Yes. In that process, they had put together some of their back end. The biggest thing was the back end, just like a DocuSign, but a DocuSign that you would do nowadays. They had to develop their own DocuSign. They had to actually spend a year just putting together sales tax compliance with every zip code in the country. To make sure they had all those pieces in place and put together. So it wasn't, what they discovered the hard way is it wasn't easy. So in 2015 or 2013 when the company had launched, they were kind of slapped in the face and say, hey, this is a lot harder than it looks. Although one of the founders' background was automotive himself. I mean, he came from the car business. His father was in the car business. He grew up around dealerships. Similar story like yourself, but when taking on all this millions and millions of dollars of the venture capital money, and then getting into it and realizing, shit, I mean,
this is pretty hard.
This is hard. I mean, to finalize, to deliver the final product to the consumer wasn't easy as it looked, but through a lot of trial and error and struggles, they're getting through it, and they're starting to. I would say Vroom is actually like a broom. They're starting to kind of sweep up some of that market share, and they're grabbing market share. And as I said, I just saw one being delivered the other day.
Some of the specifics that they saw as bad or as an opportunity to do better is the application process, where at the time, and which still exists for most dealerships right now, is you have a credit application on your website. Customer goes in, there's a ton of touch points, a ton of information that a customer has to go through. 26 different pieces of information is needed to complete that process in most cases, and then a hard credit pull is being done. Before a vehicle is even selected, we're making an inquiry on a customer's bureau before they even made a decision if they want to buy a car, if they want to actually apply for financing for that vehicle. So it's almost like that part of the process is first when it should be last. So one of the things that they kind of are hanging their hat on was the idea of utilizing a soft credit pull and being able to provide real-time exact financing payment quotes easily with a minimum amount of friction. You mentioned that you had listened to something about Gary Vee talking about removing the friction out of different processes. And that's the one thing that we've done. You mentioned our Intice products, Dealmaker, and our Shopper Express solution is designed really with that goal in mind, and that is to take the friction out of the process. Try to provide a lot more information in an easier, faster, simplified process, such as incorporating a soft credit pull so a customer can get an exact payment in real time, making the financing process easy, and without doing it where the customer gets a hard inquiry, harming his credit, even before he or she gets to the point where they've selected a vehicle and they're looking at configuring a loan for that. So anyways, Vroom, those are some of the areas that they identified as parts in the process that they could make better. And I think those are some of the things that dealers today can learn from the hundreds of millions of dollars that companies like Beepi has spent and Vroom has spent, and to team up with technology providers such as us or others in the digital retailing space that have also gone through the evolution of developing software to make the customer experience better.
And I mentioned before in previous episode when we covered digital retailing, for the customer, if the customer is unaware that it's there, I mean, you can the old field of dreams. If you build it, they will come. Well, that's bullshit. If a customer doesn't know that you have this digital retailing product there, then they're not going to know to use it. So you need to advertise for that, number one, and then make it easy. The whole omni-channel, purchase process that you're going through right now with your daughter. Got to make it easy for all parties involved just to make this a smooth transaction that, they're missing pieces here, missing pieces there, just trying to, slap together a card deal transaction. It shouldn't be that way when we're on the dawn of 2020 here. I mean, it should be such a seamless process that the customer's like, hey, you know what? That wasn't so bad. That's what, when I talked to the Vroom driver, when I talked to him, like, how's this experience for the, man, customers love it. And it's got to be for your customers a love, it's a hate relationship because they still view us like the 70s, but they got to love the whole process. They're like, man, this was the easiest thing to do. Let me refer friends and family to the dealership that you are buying from because you hit up 3 or 4 other stores in that market and they just didn't respond.
Yeah, exactly. And what's really interesting too is that you bring up a couple good points in there that I want to address. Creating a unique selling proposition, a brand strategy, a brand message that shares the car buying experience at your dealership as a benefit of why to do business with you. And I think dealers today can really focus in on how can I take my process and make it my marketing, because really that's what Apple does really well, right? Their process becomes part of the marketing. So you think about Apple, you think about Apple retail, you think about easy information. You can walk in, play with stuff, you can get answers, you can walk out, you can come in, you can buy. Tesla, the same type of thing. So they use the process as their marketing strategy. We talked about unique selling propositions and brand promises a couple episodes ago, rolling into the customer car buying experience. I think creating a process that can be part of your marketing, because at the end of the day, you look at Carvana, you look at Vroom. That's what they're doing. They're taking the process and making it their differentiation. The things that they need to do to be able to facilitate that is hard. The sourcing of vehicles, on how to get cash offers to customers for their trade-ins, the reconditioning that's necessary, taking care of all of the transactions, the delivery of the vehicle to the consumer. All of these things they need to reinvent. The good news is, the modern dealers that have the facilities, they already have that. Mm-hmm. What you do every single day, you do it super well. You don't have to reinvent that. You don't have to go out and raise $25 million to do that. You already do it well. Where you have an opportunity is to make the car buying experience better, and then as part of that, that can also then become your unique selling proposition. That can become your marketing message. And providing an experience that is going to be what the consumers are wanting. So at the end of the day, it's not going to be, I had a frustrating process, but I got a good car. It's that I got a good car and I enjoyed the experience, just like these consumers from Vroom, according to that driver is saying, right?
Yeah, according to the customer that lives in my building, the experience was a great experience. And, they're able to, very similar to Carvana, 7 days they had to decide if they want to keep the car or not. So many miles they're allowed to put on the vehicle, providing full insurance. Basically, you bought the car all online, and then you just got a return policy guarantee, as we talked about in another episode, is if you don't have a return policy, make it part of your marketing. What I love what you just said a minute ago about Apple, and that'll be definitely one of my takeaways, is the process becomes part of the marketing. And you can kind of go in and out of the Apple store. You can learn at the Apple store. There's so many different things you can get from the Apple store. When you decide to buy a pair of headphones from the Apple store, or you decide to buy a phone from the Apple store, there is no checkout counter. It's every Apple genius has the ability is to swipe your credit card right there and do a whole transaction right there. There's not that's just kind of the omni process they have there at the Apple store. So enter your process wherever you want. You looked at, a new Mac online, you pick it up there at the store, get some training, get everything you need right there at the Apple store. And they've done a genius job, obviously, with their marketing to make it part of their process. You go by the Microsoft store, and it's a ghost town there. Yep. Every mall you go into, the Microsoft store is just like 2 or 3, plenty of employees, not so many customers.
Yep. So really the process can become your unique selling proposition. It can become your marketing message. One of the things that we do with Shopper Express is to provide that for dealers, making car buying easy. You can see what I'm sharing on my screen right now. The way that we do this, and you don't have to do it from us. I know I'm moving into a commercial for Intice, but this is something that you can do with a lot of different vendors. We think that we do a better job than most, being able to communicate the idea of making it easy, talking about an express test drive where they can schedule a test drive at the dealership, at home, or at work, right on your dealership website. They can get a best price. They can configure their entire deal. They can get a personalized trade value, an express cash offer that's good for 7 days. Again, right on your dealership website. They can even research all different products, F&I products, and protection plans right on your website, again, providing full transparency into the process, and they're able to get their credit score so they can get an exact payment as they're going through the shopping experience on your dealership's website. So this is something that you guys can do as a dealer on your own, or leverage a technology provider like us and a marketer, digital marketing company like ours, to be able to facilitate using your process and align that, use your process as a marketing message and align it with the way that car buyers want to buy cars. So with that, David, we're 21 minutes in. We only got a few minutes left. I know we want to get to Bert's 3 tips and then say our goodbyes to episode 018 of the Modern Dealer Podcast.
018, who do you appreciate? So my 3 tips, 3 takeaways from this episode would be, number 1, if you have the ability, for a customer to go through your purchase process, advertise for it, because as I said earlier, if you build it, they will come. Not true. You need to show it off and train your people on it, because if your people don't know how to use it, I mean, what good is it? I mean, how can you actually talk about it? That'd be number 1, is to advertise the ability to buy online. Number 2 is change the culture of the store. If you call into the dealership and it feels like it's abrasive just from the hello from your receptionist, because I call a ton of stores and it's just, you can feel it just from the receptionist, and that's your first line of contact right there.
Yep.
The culture of 1970s still exists into 2020, so you've got to change your culture of the dealership. And as you just brought up there a few minutes ago, the process becomes part of the marketing. Make your process very clear, transparent, and easy, and put that into your marketing, and your customers will appreciate that. And they're just like, wow, this is so much easier, just like these Carvanas, these Vrooms, these Shifts, so much for Beepi, but just like those 4 companies there have found the pitfalls in our industry, and they're taking advantage of it. So take my 3 tips and apply it to your dealership immediately.
And on that note, that's a wrap.